So I just want to give a brief introduction to our two speakers here. Dusty Eaton is the CEO of A&E Design. He has extensive experience in all aspects of architecture, design, and pursuing innovation in his work. His exceptional design abilities, coupled with strong verbal and graphic communication skills, result in innovative design concepts and a detail-driven project experience. He has led many of A&E's largest and most complicated projects to date, and has completed these projects with great success. And of course, he was the principal architect on the MSU Norm Asbjornson Hall project. And then we also have Dr. Kath Williams here with us tonight, whose specializations include application of green building rating systems, sustainability, education, and training for corporations and professional firms. The firm's specialty in lead project development and lead documentation, sustainability, using an integrated design and a charrette process are globally recognized since Kath founded the firm in 1999. Having completed LEED certification on 142 projects, the firm is proud of leading 12 projects to platinum. So Kath Williams' professional experience was recognized with awarding of the LEED Fellow 2011 designation as one of the first 34 in the world. So we're so happy to have you both here with us tonight, and so excited to see what you will share with us. Thank you so much.
Gosh, what an honor to be here. As Dean Lee said, according to her, I have to blow some minds. So we'll see. I am a MSU grad, so from the School of Architecture, and having the opportunity then to work back on campus is always my absolute passion, favorite projects, and this one in particular stands out. So tonight what we're going to do is talk about interdisciplinary design and how a true integrated design process leads to really interesting outcomes, but also has challenges. So we're going to talk pretty honestly about what integrated design looks like, how it works, how it leads to innovation or can, but also what some of the real challenges and pitfalls come along with a process like this. So before we really talk about the building, we have to talk about Mr. Norm Asbjornson. So Norm gave this remarkable gift, the largest in school history at the time, of $50 million to build this facility. He is from a very small town in central Montana called Winifred. Has anybody been to Winifred? A few, yeah, okay. So you will, if you have, when you go, because you really should see this great little gem of a town that's just north of Lewistown. Norm is from there, and he's very philanthropic for Winifred. He believes in the people of Winifred, in the culture, in supporting and really giving back to the community that gave so much to him. And you will look down Main Street, and every building that has a red roof, that's Norm's signature for a building that he has funded or supported. And you will see red roofs all down Main Street. And I'm currently working on a project for the school in Winifred, which is it's going to be one of the top K-12 facilities in the entire state of Montana. It's got 100 students in Winifred, Montana. Revolutionary spaces that are, many of them are named after spaces within this building that he wanted to take to the K-12 level to ensure that when someone arrives at this building, they're not seeing that level of innovation for the first time if they grew up in Winifred, Montana. Pretty remarkable, and a great gift to education and to the state of Montana. So Norm gave this gift with one primary goal in mind, and that was to change the way engineering is taught. And what that meant to him is thinking about what interdisciplinary collaboration looks like at the university level. And the very first meeting that we had the opportunity to meet with Norm, he looked right at me and he said, "You've been hired to design this building. Here's my goal. You need to fundamentally change the way engineering is taught with this building." There's a bar that you have to really work toward. Okay, so we are going to fundamentally change the way engineering is taught. And he followed that with this wonderful story that said he founded a heating, ventilation, air conditioning, mechanical equipment company that's in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Eaton. It's a very successful manufacturing facility, and hires engineers every single day. He said, "I hire the most brilliant engineers from around the country at some of the greatest universities. Many MSU students come to work at Aon. And the one common denominator that I find is they're brilliant engineers. They are the best trained engineers, and they are ready to go to work. And I know because we only hire the best. And I find that consistently they have been trained in a silo. They have been trained to be really great engineers in this vertically integrated, great engineering school, but have they really been taught to cross-collaborate? Are there programs and platforms where that engineering student that I'm going to hire has worked with an architecture student and a business student? Because the first thing that's going to happen when they land at Aon is I'm going to put them in a room with my sales team, my marketing team, my production line manager, and they have to figure out how to collaborate. This is not engineering in a vacuum anymore. So I want students that have been taught that at the university. I want to fundamentally change the way engineering is taught by creating a conduit for that kind of cross-disciplinary collaboration. What a remarkable goal. He's such a visionary thinker, and that's the platform for which we started this project. And he was basing that goal thinking about spaces like this, right? Many of the spaces within the College of Engineering and many other classrooms on campus look like this. And this space right here does not look like a vehicle for cross-disciplinary collaboration, right? I mean, that classroom very well could and probably was built in the 30s. That's the kind of spaces that he was reacting to with this gift. Let's change the types of spaces that our students are working in order to then set a lofty goal of changing the engineering. And he is a very passionate man, and he's very adamant in his perspective. And the thing that he said to all of us right at the beginning is, I don't want anyone on this team who's not willing to push to the point of failure. And everybody kind of did a head turn and said, what does that mean to you? And he said, we're going to push, we're going to challenge the status quo. We're going to do something here that hasn't been done before, and I'm okay with failure. I talk about this with my team and at my firm, that this idea of fail fast. Right? We need to test ideas, and the ones that work will rise to the surface. And he was very clear with everybody on that team in a very passionate speech to everybody. This is what we're doing with this building. And if you're not a part of that, you need to go somewhere else, because that's the kind of people that I want on this team, supporting and innovating on my project. And the real summary to that is, he would say all the time, there will be no naysayers. No naysayers on my project. He said, rip the rear view mirror off, because that's not the direction we're going. Push it, push it, push it. I gave this money for you all to push and challenge me. What a revolutionary approach to set a precedent and set an expectation for the team that this is how we're going to go through design. It's like a dream from an architectural perspective, that this is the kind of innovation we're looking for. So when we started this project, we knew, so from an architectural perspective, we had to interview for these projects, and we knew that that kind of integrated design is critical. So we brought our team together before we had the project, when we were interviewing for it, and it looked like this. This was a camera we set up in the corner of the room. We brought people from all the different disciplines to begin thinking about the way we would approach this project. And I went and dug this video out years later, and we never had looked at it. And it was such a fun process, because the image on the left, the wall on the left, was all of the ideas that were beginning to surface, and we hadn't met Norm at that point. We were not selected yet. We were competing for this project, and we pulled the team together to say, let's imagine what he's looking to accomplish with this building, but we know we can't do it with just architects in the room. Right? We have to think about what we had. We brought energy models, we brought sustainability experts, we brought all different disciplines to the table to say, how are we going to innovate with a project like this? So when we started the project, we showed this diagram and said, we are going to approach this using an integrated design model. And what that means is we're going to bring all these disciplines to the table from the very onset. And that is not typical in an architectural process. Architects oftentimes have big egos and like to say, okay, I'm going to drive the process, and we're gonna go, and then I'll let you know, engineers and landscape architects, everybody else, I'll let you know when I need you, and then we will begin to fold in these other disciplines. And oftentimes that's true from the owner perspective as well as, hey, just let me design the building to a point and then I'll fold you in. But that never can result in a process that's truly reflective of a larger institution, of larger goals. So we brought all of these different perspectives to the table from the very outset. And these meetings were very intense, right? There's a lot of perspectives and a lot of ideas that surface around, I need this, and what about this, and how to, so our job is to facilitate those discussions and pull all of these ideas into the table. We do that with this process. It's just kind of overly simplified to 3 steps of listen, collaborate, and apply. And when I talk about architects being sometimes a little ego-driven, it means they just want to jump to design, right? The first thing is like, how do we quickly jump to a solution, because that is what we do, is design cool things. So let's jump right to the solution. And in this case, we talk about how do we listen first and intently be very genuine listeners to ensure that when we go through this process, it's going to be a reflection of everybody that's a part of it, and of the university, and of the goals of everybody that's been identified to be a part of this process, not just some architect somewhere, because that person isn't going to matter in the end. We need this to be a process that's truly integrated. So we would go from this, let's intently listen before we ever pick up a pencil, to then let's begin to collaborate. Right? Let's begin to collaborate on those solutions that on those ideas that we've heard, and then let's start to translate that into space, into spatial solutions that start to reflect everything that we heard. And it's cyclical, right? Because we're going to go through a lot of ideas, and they have to go through this evolution in order to be successful and truly be integrated. But all these different perspectives around the table matter, because the electrical engineer has a very different set of goals and a perspective than maybe Norm, maybe the students, right? The building users really don't care so much about what that electrical engineer's goals are, but they all matter to the success. So in preparing for this, we developed this, we lovingly call this diagram the Squid, and we pulled, it was a way to represent what integrated design looks like, because there are so many facets to a project like this, and down the left are a series of elements that have to be considered when thinking about designing a building. So here we have this bare piece of ground, there's simply a $50 million gift, and a change the way engineering is taught mantra. Right? So that is really what we're working with at that point. So we begin to show this diagram to say, here's all of the considerations that we need to start with. So if you look down, we have systems and energy, campus integration, shell and core, it's the envelope of the building. We're thinking about the program and the user experience, and then just the simple logistics and process of how are we going to get this thing done, right? How do we get through the board of regents? How do we make sure it's in budget? How do we logistically get all the permits? All that is just as important as thinking about program and experience. What's the community integration? What is the undergraduate and graduate interaction with this building going to be? And so you start to look at the first 12 weeks of this project, all of these factors are concurrently being studied. That's the real beauty to an integrated process. And it's super messy, right? Like, we talk about the importance of this has to be, it's not going to be a linear sequence of events, and that's okay, and we all have to embrace it, but we have to be true to it. And so we would start all of these meetings with checking egos at the door. It's like there's a lot of players involved in this, and a lot of people with important perspectives. But if everybody puts that to the side for the true value of being at that table and being a part of the process, we can actually make change, and we can start to be revolutionary in our thinking. So all of these things are happening. So the way we went through this is we'd have a visioning session. It would be a 3-day intense workshop. We'd be bringing people in and out for 3 concurrent days, and then we would have a work period that would look like this, and then we'd get back together. This stands for Integrated Design Event. So this was kind of an overlapping schedule that would go through, and we begin to fold the contractor in and all the engineers into this process. So when you start to summarize and thinking about what integrated design looks like, it's iterative, right? It can't be linear or it won't be successful. It's very inclusive. So what we end up doing is front loading all the work that would otherwise normally spread through the process. We bring them all to the table from the very beginning. We're looking for those synergies, and we all have to be accepting of decisions or influenced by the broader team. So it looked a lot like this. We had public forum after public forum after public forum, and it was frankly exhausting to a point, right? There's always this discussion of how much input is too much input. And so we would hold these pizza parties and free lunch and these kind of things that we would say, come give us your perspective. And what it was really doing is also creating buy-in. It was creating buy-in from the larger campus community, because if we can create something that people have had input on, that they create buy-in, they're going to then support it in a different way. And their opinions matter in this process. This level of integrated kind of campus outreach had never been done on a new building where we truly posted up, instead of just having committees and that did have diverse representation. This time we said, let's just literally post up in the sub for a couple of days and offer free lunch and see what happens, and see who comes and who wants to engage in the dialogue. And we got a lot of students, like these students here, that would come by. These are model pieces, so this is a site model, and these model pieces represent different configurations of the building program that we were exploring. And we had remarkable feedback. Students saying things like, hey, this is a better site, right? There's places, this is the kind of cow paths of how students walk, right? This is where they actually walk when they cross the street. This is where we want, it makes a lot of sense to think about this as a circulator, a pedestrian circulator, or vehicular access, or bus drop-off. Were these things that were really tangible to a student that was like, I just walked across that street, and here's the problem with the building looking right there. Or here's the opportunity. And then starting to create discussion, we would just chart pack all of these comments, right? We'd just write them all down, and then we'd take them back and we'd distill them. We'd start to think about how do we incorporate that? And we said from the very beginning, we have to be genuine in that. We have to be true so that students know their input matters. It's not just doing it for the facade of, yes, we checked the box that we were having student engagement. It's like, we genuinely want that feedback, and that's what really, I think, is felt in the building today, that there's this kind of realness to the building, its siting, and how students use it, because students helped to shape it. Had a lot of, everybody loves a model. We had a lot of site models and moving pieces around, and really starting to think about how the building engaged with the campus. And this same level of dialogue was also true with our lead process. And Kath's going to talk a little bit about how we went through that and what the lead process looks like, and how students also inform the documents of it.
I appreciated Dusty asking me to come talk about lead, because I graduated from here, and I've had the opportunity to come back and work here and teach a little bit here, and I worked in all this is like my job was in the vice president of research office, and the first job, big project, was a green building project in 1995, and its building is probably the most famous building ever built, and it was totally off the grid, and it was to be a tech park here at Montana State. And Bob Swenson was vice president of research at the time, and he told me that I was going to be the project chief on this green building project. I didn't know what green building was. None of us did, and I was the bottom of the hierarchy in the office, and so it became my job to shepherd and be the project director on this green building project. And we brought in experts like Dusty, like this, and did a collaborative design process. The students named it the Epicenter project, but the project actually was never built. but you'll hear sometimes along the way about that. Coming about that project that was built in other pieces in other ways. Look back at what happened with LEED. It's leadership in energy and environmental design, and for those of you who are going to take the LEED exam and become a LEED accredited professional, that's one of the test questions. It's a green building standard, and the epicenter was a pilot project for it. So facilities here and the administration here over the years have seen this tool, LEED, as a tool, which is exactly what it is. It's a tool. And what we use it for is a green building standard that's now used all around the world. But we use it for education. We use it as a guide for design and sustainable construction. It's a great measurement tool. And in my introduction, I finished certified 140 projects. 12 of them are on this campus. This is one of the outstanding universities for the use of LEED. And it's because you use this as a measurement tool. And we used it from the very beginning, from the very first day with Norm, and I still have to look up how to spell his last name. I'm happy everybody calls it the Norm. I still have trouble with his last name. And one of the things, Dusty kind of said it, but he's a powerful man, a big man, and strong. And that's what we needed in a leader to make this building happen. So we use LEED as that, and what it ends up, what LEED does is the buildings are certified. And they're at certified level based on how many points you earned, silver, gold, platinum. So I looked up to make sure I had the 12. The first one on campus was Gaines, then Cooley, then we have Miller, and now we have Romney and Process, and those were all existing buildings. So this is a standard for energy efficiency, and I'll show you that in a minute. But then we did new buildings here, Jabs, Gallatin Hall, Yellowstone Hall, Highline Hall. We just finished Bobcat Athletic. I just delivered the plaque last week. We also did 2 additions. The Museum of the Rockies, the storage unit, the storage CCH is LEED certified, and the Wellness Center, which is an addition, is going to be, is in the process of LEED certification, but the 2 outstanding, of course, are the American Indian Hall and the Norm that have reached LEED Platinum level. I had to look them up because I can't remember, and it changes every day. There's 136 buildings in Montana that are LEED buildings. There's 136, 12 of them being on this campus, which is pretty cool. And the biggest thing with LEED is, this is a scorecard, which is the one-pager which we use for sustainability education, and these are all posted on the website. You can get these anytime. You can Google Norm and get this. But down at the bottom is certified is 40, so it's how many points did you earn. And this was the final scorecard for the Norm, and we earned 82 points. And when we're talking about sustainability and integrated design, it's all of this. It's not energy efficiency, it's not just water efficiency, it's all of this. So it's looking at the site, it's looking at water efficiency, it's looking at energy and atmosphere. So this is an educational tool because you got the whole thing, the whole tool on a one-pager that you can hand to an owner or you can hand to a donor and say, these are all the issues we're going to do. And the columns are yes, the middle column is maybe, it's a question mark, and the right hand is what we can't do. Like you can't get points for an existing building if you're building new. You can't get all of these points. But we had to have 80 points to reach platinum, and we had 82. And this is where the integrated design process, LEAD helps. LEAD makes you pay attention, because if you say, well, we're not going to do this, it affects everything else. So you start to lose points, you have to keep coming back to it. So we use this scorecard all the way through the process. And it really is a dynamic tool. It's upgraded all the time. The American Indian Hall, we fought for every point in that building. And we didn't have to fight too hard on here because it was engineered well, and it was engineering focused. So the building system and cutting the idea of making it the best engineered building with great lighting and great water wasn't an argument. This is an engineering school building, which changed a lot when, we'll talk a little bit about when the Honors College got dumped on us. And we're in the middle of an engineering building, in the middle of this, several years in the process, and here comes, oh, and by the way, we're going to have to take you're going to have to take the Honors College on top of it. And what does that mean? So it was back up, and let's go back in the integrated design process, bringing Dean Lee in and starting these conversations. And how do you plug in Honors College, which in and of itself is interdisciplinary. So it was a perfect addition. And as I made a comment earlier today, Dean Lee was a perfect addition because we all had to behave in front of her. If you know her, we do not misbehave in front of Dean Lee, but we were misbehaving and yelling at each other and fighting about this stuff. And she brought civility to this process. So I could talk on and on and on about the individual categories and what we looked at on this project, but I picked particularly tonight the idea of where we got exemplary performance and innovation, which are the last categories on that scorecard. And we got 5 points out of the 82 for maximizing open space, because of the idea that we left, as big as this building is, we drew a line around it, a project boundary, and we had to leave as much open space in that boundary as we possibly could. We also had on-site renewable energy. If you've been up on the roof, it's a magnificent tour. It was fun to watch them be up there when they were installing it. And there's also a commitment by the university to purchase green power, so that the grid gets greener as we go. But one of the things about LEAD is it changes all the time and is upgraded. It's a robust tool because we learn more about sustainability. But this one was particularly important, was the pilot credit that you can test. As we do projects, we test upcoming credits possibilities. And the one for this building that we started on from the beginning was designing for active occupants. And if you look around this building, particularly the stairway, that's interactive, a place to gather. That stairway helped us, and it has been shown around the world, that stairway, because it's more than just a stairway. And it encourages people to be active. It encourages you to walk. You hide the elevators. I've noticed there's now painted things on the wall saying, here's how you get to the elevator. Because we hit them on purpose. We're not supposed to say that, but we hit them on purpose. So people will walk. And this was, and it's attractive. You want to be on that stairway. It's not in a closet at the end of the hall. And there's also LEED signs in the building about healthy activities. This credit is now permanently into LEED. And this project was a pilot for it. There were other universities that did the same thing and other corporations that helped refine this, but this project made the difference in designing. It's not an innovation anymore. It's a requirement in LEED projects that you design for healthy interior activities. And then we met all 4 regional points. Each area of the country and climate zones have particular regional priority credits, and we met all of them. for Montana. This is my favorite part, besides it being platinum. This is my favorite part. The students were really involved in this project. And so normally I lead a lead charrette where we go through every one of those points, and we have the whole team and we have the stakeholders and we have everybody involved in the project say this is a priority, this is something we can do, it's an educational experience so that you learn sustainability along the way. But in this particular project, we turned it over to the students, and we had the students lead the charrette. And what I worked with them in teaching them lead, we had 3 full days of workshop where the students learned lead. They could recite it almost as well as I could at the end of the 3 days. Almost all of them passed the lead exam. But they put together, they've had meetings after meeting after meeting. We met every Monday to process what we were going to do for a whole semester before we actually held the lead charrette. And a charrette is a design workshop, and it's so if you ever get the trivia question, it comes from the French for a cart that architects used. They would don't make Dusty do this, push his design around on the street and get input on the design. This is the idea behind the lead charrette, and the students led it. It's a full day, they led it. They divided themselves up into each of those categories. They had small working groups. They kept all the notes. They kept all of the, put up the next one real quick. But they did everything to facilitate the input from all of the professionals, all of the people. It was open to the whole campus. It was open to actually the community. And one of the things Dusty has said is that this was a strategic change, injection point, and it was led by the students. And I do that again in a minute, is to let the students handle a charrette, because ultimately it brought everybody in to use and lead, and to you being part of the integrated design and getting us where we wanted to go.
Yeah, I think that, the lead charrette example was really part of a larger process of engagement. And I'm a big believer in our working process of this notion that people support that which they help create. And so if we can have opportunities for more supporters, more kind of owners of the process, they will support it all the way through. And that's, I think, what we got here by engaging a student to ask them their perspective. They forever have a different, they hopefully left there and said, I helped shape the norm. I helped be a part of that. And therefore they forever look at it and walk through it and experience it with a different lens. It's one of support and ownership, as opposed to a passive relationship with there's another building on campus. So as we got into building, you think about this idea of program. What we just define as programming is really thinking about spaces, their square footage, how they relate to one another. So we were thinking about models of building prototypes. So we're looking at, are we doing a more prototypical heavy lab, heavy classroom, heavy collaboration? And then we got into this idea of innovation clusters, and really, are any of these right for the Norm building, or is it going to be kind of our own over here, right? We don't know yet, but we look at very standardized elements that go within this building, and a lot of discussion around lab-driven building, a lab-driven building, that this was not going to be heavily focused on office space. It was going to be student-focused. And so as we continued to work through that, the program mix started to look like this. So we had large amount of project design and kind of flexible lab spaces, classroom, a little bit of office, and then programmed collaboration area, meaning we don't just leave that to be the leftover space in the hallway. We actually identify it as square footage that's essential to the building. And so we're going through this, and as Kath alluded to, we're going through this whole programming process, and then there was this incredible kind of aha moment. And I won't say they got dumped on us. Right? So
I
this,
will. That's what we felt like.
this aha moment in the process where the Honors College came into this building. So we're talking about interdisciplinary collaboration and how do we be innovative with interdisciplinary collaboration, and yet we're still designing an engineering building. Right? So this question coming back to us of, are we actually doing what we said we would? Are we creating this kind of conduit for interdisciplinary collaboration? Or are we actually kind of slapping a little bit of a sticker on that and not really embodying what that means? And the discussion at the time was, well, we'll handle that with programming, right? We'll bring, once the building's done, we'll bring those kind of programs into this space. But we kept calling it this aha moment in the project process was the Honors College is the perfect addition to the program. Right? It exemplifies interdisciplinary collaboration. In fact, I saw on the website for the Honors College, one of the learning outcomes is honor students will be able to integrate concepts and methodologies from multiple disciplines and diverse viewpoints. That is precisely what we wanted this building to be about. So the infusion of the Honors College did come late, which for us, as Kath said, dump on. For us, that's like, we have like all the program, the building is programmed, we have a budget that we're meeting, we can only build so many square feet, and every square foot is currently accounted for. So how's that going to work? Right? Everybody counted? Not sure. So we had it does sort of start this integrated process over, but the vision of the team and the commitment to integrated design meant that everybody was willing to say, let's shift in order to make sure that honors plugs in, because it's that important. And it's that important both from the interdisciplinary perspective, but also from infusing art and music and other disciplines into engineering. And that's where Dean Gunnick and Dean Lee, everybody went, this is magical, right? This is going to be what makes this building completely different than anything else that we've done before. So the red is showing the spaces that adjusted in order to fit the Honors College into our program. Because again, there's still, with a large gift like this, there's still a budget and there's still a very challenged construction market. What can we actually build for this? And it gets constrained, and every square foot matters. So we tend to think about projects on a cost per square foot basis. So every square foot matters, and then how that square footage gets allocated is what we do with the program process. So we also held these meetings with every dean and representatives from every college on campus. And we started by simply asking, could you use space in this building? Every hand was like, yep, I need space. And we have, but how would you use it? What type of space? How would we think about cross-platform programming? And we generated this one night after we had a long day of these meetings, and we generated this diagram to say, look at every college that says, yes, we could use space in here, right? Gallatin College, the Wind Application Center, the College of Business, Civil Engineering, on and on and on. Everybody said, the makerspace in this building is going to be like nothing before. So we would love to have space in here, and there's an opportunity for that platform sharing. So we were going through all of these, and of course we have this giant funnel of information, and our job is to get it to a building at the end that's in budget, which is kind of that unfortunate reality of what we do. So we get to the end, and these 6 key aspirations came out of this programming and kind of early design process, which is this building should be a super collaborator, right? Nothing like we've seen before. It should force and encourage that kind of collaboration. It should be a catalyst for innovation. How do we use this building to promote innovation at a higher level? It should be an engineering playground. This was a particular passion of Norm's, is that the engineering everywhere should be on display, so that when that new prospective student walks through, they go, that is what I want to do, right? That dune buggy, that cool experiment, that cool project is everywhere, and so students, both current and prospective, feel that kind of palpable energy that comes with projects being on display.
One quick thing. In case you didn't notice, This says NAIC, not NAH, and we started with it being Norm Innovation Center. And the problem with that is everybody was calling it the Innovation Center and not honoring Norm. So the name got changed in the middle of the process to NAH, and you all came up with the Norm. So it honors the driver of this project and the person who supported all of it. A lot of the early documents say NAIC.
Yeah, that's a great comment. That was a sketch that one of our architects did right after one of the meetings around this. This was actually centered around this idea that this will be a gateway building. This could be and should be an arrival point, a front door to campus. So the building should inspire 24/7 use. We went into a lot of dialogue with students around what's it going to take to create a little Las Vegas. Like, how do we create something that people want to be in all the time? And then we have to develop a roadmap to net zero. High performance building was always a foundational goal. And then understanding how this building plugs into a larger campus context. Critical when you think about work on a campus is how does it plug into this larger context? I mean, all the way down to how do people circulate through it when they're going from point A to point B in this building? What is that kind of circulation? So at this point in the process, we had 91 meetings around this. I mean, it's painful to say. Like, think about the process around 91 meetings. They were all, exhaustive but really great. And that's what the result of those aspirations we just talked about is not possible with a small group that says we'll just drive this through. It was, in this particular case, the focus on integrated design resulted in this kind of commitment, but we all signed up for it. We all said we're willing to do that for the betterment. I think when you think about integrated design, think about it's probably in the architectural world, it's probably the most overused term because it sounds really good. Right? We do integrated design, and everybody goes, "Oh, that's awesome! Great, bring a bunch of perspectives together." But true integrated design is really hard to do because you really have to put everything to the side, and the entire team has to commit that the outcome will be a result of the process, not your preconceived idea of what the building should be. That's a fundamental difference from what oftentimes a design process starts with, which is, I know exactly what this should be. I've got this perfect idea. I know how to implement and execute better than anybody what that vision should be. If everybody can truly put the outcome as a result of a process, an integrated process, that's the differentiator. And so in this building, we had an interesting, this has never been talked about, so we're digging a little bit. So we had two interesting factors at play on the integrated design process and kind of previous influences. So when we started this project, there was two key images. The one on the left is a site plan diagram on a whiteboard that was our first meeting on campus regarding this project. We've been selected, and this was presented as the site plan for the project. This is what the site plan will do. This is how it will sit, and this is the building has to go here, the park garage has to go here, the plaza has to go here, and I remember standing in front of the whiteboard, and I said, "Well, but we haven't gone through the process yet, so this is good, but we really do need to go through the process." Yeah, you can go through the process, but this is the site plan. So it was just one person's perspective of what should happen, but this is what happens all the time in any project. It's not that person isn't wrong. It's a really good, thoughtful site plan, but is that person okay with the outcome being a result of this process? Maybe, maybe not, but this was said to us to be the driver. This is going to be the site plan. The second image is one that was generated for Norm for a gift when he was being kind of courted for this gift. That image was generated by someone to entice Norm to give the money, right? So this is what the building can look like, which is just in a vacuum. It's a fine little sketch. It says, and it got Norm inspired, right? It was like, this is what my name can be on, and that's oftentimes what early renderings do for a fundraising effort like this, to say the aha, look at what this fund can do. So Norm had this image in his mind, and this is what the building needed to look like. So we have a site plan, we've got a building, and we haven't started yet. Right? So now we have to navigate this integrated design process around. We know that's the right process, but we've got these two factors at play, neither of which I think are necessarily the right solution, but we just haven't gone through the process. So we embraced it, and we said, I presented to Norm many times to say, I know that's the image you like. There's elements of that I totally understand the value to, but are you okay with us going through this process and ensuring that the outcome is actually part of something bigger, a set of goals and aspirations that we're going to work with you and the campus and the students and the faculty and everybody else to help create. And he said, absolutely, I get it. I really like that, but I get it. And so we had that kind of lingering, and every time we went to present and if it didn't look like that, we were always walking in with trepidations. Okay, how's this gonna go? And then we had this factor. So those are just, I just share that because it's oftentimes what you encounter in a process like this. There is a solution already in someone's mind, and maybe it's right, and many buildings get designed that way, where it's like, this is what I want, and we move forward. But this one was different, and we didn't want to jeopardize the process because of this kind of starting point. So we got in.
One quick thing on that is, on the two people who, those were their ideas, one person on each side. I'm not a designer. So they took me aside, both of them, and said, let them play their game, let the architects and engineers do what they want to do. But that's the site plan, and that's what the building's going to look like. And I was like, I'm sitting here in the middle going, I have nothing to do with this. We're trying to make this process work with a tool called LEED.
You'll notice neither of those are the results. So. Okay, so then we went through this. We went through early diagramming. We're thinking about how the building lives on the site. We're thinking about the relationship, starting to get into the site planning, then block and stack diagrams, looking at program, how it's starting to turn into kind of spatial diagrams and exploration there, and then how it sits on the site with the honors college. So this came in, and this was another one of those kind of reminder moments where at one point when this first started, the natural gravitation was honors is going to be a wing, kind of quote unquote, like a separate element. And we quickly all did a pivot to say, we can't be it, right? That's not the integrated process that we talked about. So we actually, but I mean, it's a checks and balances for ourselves, because we actually had renderings that we plopped that thing on as a standalone little connected corner, but it wasn't part and truly integrated. So that, again, the honors being where it is was a part of this bigger process. That's the magic in the process. So it looks like this. We often think about this kind of cycle of we're going through this iterative process, right? We're generating ideas, we're testing them. We fail quick, and then we move forward before they come out to actual solutions. And as we did that, those design iterations, we're thinking about energy modeling. We're looking at really kind of building diagrams, how this building is going to function on summer days and summer nights and winter days and winter nights, and using energy modeling to actually inform design. So thinking about, this was a little snippet out of an energy model that we did where we were using it to look at first costs versus life cycle costs. So thinking about our proposed kind of insulation scheme and what is it going to do to the building if we increase the wall insulation, increase the continuous insulation on the wall, or increase the roof insulation. And then we plug it into the energy cost in Bozeman to look at that over a lifespan and see what the savings would be. Is it worth it? Is it not? It had a first cost and it has a life cycle impact. And we are fighting every dollar on first cost because it's critical. We get this thing in budget. We know every decision we make today is going to impact the operations of the building forever. So we have to be really kind of thoughtful about that. So we got to the end, and there was a couple of key campus drivers. This would be a front door to campus. Everybody agreed that was seen as a key element. This is also the first academic building across Grant Street, so heading to the south. Therefore, it was setting a precedent, a tone for what the growth that's going to go to the south of us here, what that growth is going to look like, how the building is scaled. This was one of the first buildings that was a more urban context, therefore we put the building up to the street. We didn't have the large greenscape in front, moved the building up to the street. We did a lot of streetscape studies to say what's the right distance from the sidewalk and the street for the building in this more urban context. And then thinking about how are people going to arrive and how do we make sure that the building is accessible to continue to promote this kind of collaboration. And then from a building standpoint, thinking about, of course, flexible space, just hyper flexible, a lot of exploration on this active learning pedagogy, putting engineering on display, student work everywhere. That's just kind of the common theme as we were going through design. And then using the building as a teaching tool. So, you know, we all know the adage around like design by committee, and I think that's one of the challenges with integrated design, right? That you get this. And that's the fear when you have so many opinions and way too many that you can't manage them properly, and then you just end up with something that makes no sense. And so our job is really to distill that and make sure that we can capture all of those ideas, but we can still translate that into something that's effective. So the solution, the building is organized by these two main bars that you've experienced. Kind of this, we're in the north bar on this side, and then there's the south bar. So here we are, we've got the north bar and the south bar, and the idea being through a lot of design iterations, we split the building open to create this common core, bring as much of the program out into the center and make it visible as possible. And the building on the far west end is narrower and it opens up. And so that actually became part of a discussion around creating both noisy and quiet spaces, more intimate and more social spaces. So the further you go down to the west, the building narrows up, the spaces get tighter, and as we come toward the east, they open up, they get wider, they get more social. The grand stair is kind of the pinnacle of that. And then how they stack laboratories on the south bar going up, and of course the inspiration hall at the end. The real heart and soul of the building is that stair, the commons area, creating a place for musical performances, creating a place for students to gather, where presentations can occur from Inspiration Hall. They can be projected out there onto that projector screen, so it can be overflow space. Really thinking about this utilization of public space and how we can create a place that people will want to be, even if they don't necessarily have a class in this building. There was a goal that was set to us on creating a blue and gold building, which, you know, for us, we're like, oh. But do so in a way that isn't kitchen kind of, we had to be really thoughtful, right? We just saw these subtle integrations. We came up with this blue bottle that actually, if you look at it in section, it's like an upside down bottle. And it's, we had this as clear glass, and we had a meeting with President Cruzado, and she said, I'm really passionate about this building feeling like you're on the campus of MSU. When you walk through this shouldn't feel like it's anywhere USA. You need to be really feeling that you're on a campus, in a building on the campus at MSU. So these subtle nods through our environmental graphics, through just subtle introductions of color, that it does feel that we've got the blue and gold, right? Thinking about how these spaces, this idea of these centrally loaded common spaces, were really to put them as close as we could to labs and office space and classroom. Directly outside, you could create that impromptu interaction, right? That place where people can grab a seat, plug in, and it's really easy. The coffee shop cafe element was part of a we actually started as a student furniture group to say, okay, all the way down to what type of furniture do you want, what kind of surface on your feet, if you're gonna be in this building really late, if you're gonna be studying there really early, what's comfortable? And we went through every space in this building and talked about the seating types. Right? What kind of, do you want individualized, do you want groups? And we went through space by space. And one of the things that came out of it, the building didn't have a cafe in the beginning. And one of the goals, if you remember those aspirations, was 24/7 use. Students said, without a cafe, without coffee, without some means to food, we're not gonna be there. Like, it's just not gonna happen. And so that was a totally, just kind of a surprise integration. A lot of people resisted it, didn't really want it, but it just was, you gotta have it if you're gonna create this kind of environment. Another great outcome of the integrated process. These collaboration spaces became really important. When I say we programmed them, we went floor by floor and looked at how they were gonna work with students to talk about how they would be used. The cafe up here at the corner became really important. So this is the first floor, collaboration spaces. Second floor, this idea, we started to define these spaces as like a perch, a touchdown, a collaboration point, and then think about like this rail where we have marker board and surfaces right across from that where you could create those kind of impromptu meetings and work locations. That's what they look like on level 2. And then thinking about level 3, same kind of spaces, but again, getting quieter as the building narrows. The active classroom spaces was really important. This idea of a classroom in the round came. We had a whole nother committee centered around just classroom space. And what are they gonna do? And this idea came, or actually Dean Lee reminded me, it came from a student originally, that thinking about how we engage, get this kind of stuff out of the way and actually create a space where a dialogue can happen, right? What a cool space. I hope it's being used like that. I think it is, and it's been, every time I've walked by that space has people. I talked to one professor the first semester it opened, and she said, what a nightmare to teach him. Like, I've got nothing to hide behind. There's things, I'm like right in the middle. And then she's like, but I really like it. It creates a totally different dialogue for a classroom setting. And then the Inspiration Hall, the idea of these movable seats that came out of Europe, this idea that we could create this space that was so flexible it could have this collapsible seating bank, that space could turn into a platform space for setting up senior projects, and then it could turn into an Inspiration Hall presentation space. Innovation Alley was something that came out of this process as well, which was intended to be the garage space. Overhead doors open up, it's a raw space where work can happen, and then this idea that we could spill outside, this kind of indoor-outdoor connection became really important for that project yard space where you could do larger projects outside. So we thought a lot about the beam, the hoist beam that's under the walkway for a crane. We thought about the size of this opening, how you'd move things in and out, and just that kind of raw, creating space that isn't precious, right? That just can get torn up, and that's what it's intended to do. And of course, the lab spaces within it, a lot of exposure, put it on display, really thinking about how those spaces then spill out. And Norm had a lot of stories around the importance of student work being on display and how he talked to students who there was a girl who didn't go into engineering because she had no idea what was happening behind those old CMU walls. And then this kind of space is totally inspiring. Right? When you see student work like that, young students, prospective students want to be a part of it.
There was a lot of discussion about those windows and putting the lab so people could walk down the hall, and whether that would be a distraction. If you're working on equipment in those labs and you'd have people staring at you or waving at you out the window, I don't know if that happened. It was a huge discussion of do we do that, or will there be focus of attention outside of the building if you put those windows in?
The integration of art, music, that became where I think a lot of people really lit up, that thinking about this not just being the pristine engineering hall, but how do we, and it was fun to see Norm really light up around these ideas that were going much beyond kind of a traditional building into something that he never thought about, integration of music in a space like this. Just this notion of how the student input shaped something like the cafe, and what a cool story to think about. That didn't exist until we engaged the students. The building as a teaching tool became really important. You've seen the kiosks around here that are showing live. You can go to the website that's showing, I think it's NAH Live or something, that is showing kind of what's happening with the building, the energy use. Really simple things like a transpired solar collector on the south side of the building, the black vertical wall panels that you see are bringing fresh air in and preheating it through the just simple solar orientation to really sophisticated building night flush systems that are happening within the building. It is net zero ready. We need about a rooftop on the parking garage of PV panels, and we'd be very close. So that was a goal of being net zero ready, and of course the first LEED Platinum building on the campus. Norm also wanted to put his equipment on display, so he makes mechanical equipment, right? So we thought, what a cool story. Let's put, like, why not have glass into the mechanical room and show it off, because that's what built this building. So not very often have we put glass on a mechanical room. What a cool way to show what he does. There was a recent study by the National Renewable Energy Lab. This building, when we modeled it, our energy model showed that would use approximately half of the energy that the rest of the buildings on campus. And we're actually about a third. And there's a lot, I know some of you are involved, and there's a lot of post-occupancy research happening. There's sensors all over this building. Kevin Amende and others are really involved in tracking that data, and is it doing what we said? So a couple of kind of key lessons learned. Managing expectations. Right? That was just imperative. We have a lot of perspectives, and as I showed in those two images, we have a lot of expectations from some of what this building might or should look like. But being able to manage those becomes a really important job of the design team. Building consensus, campus-wide. This is probably the largest consensus building effort we had ever gone through. The university had ever gone through. It was a little bit of new territory for everybody. The programming phase alone went for almost a year. Just that kind of programming. One of the key outcomes that we realized partway through is there was not always a decision maker. So who really is making that final say? We've had all the input. Who is the decision maker? It's going to be that kind of final, and partway through that shifted a little bit, and then there was clarity among the executive committee of we have decision makers, and that became a really important distinction. We asked ourselves a lot about how much input is too much. We have to actually ask that question of we've had so much. At some point, you have to keep moving, so you have to make sure to do the input process efficiently, and then kind of define for yourself what success looks like around this wide-reaching input. We were talking earlier about the building change versus the pedagogy change versus what happens with actual programs in the space is something that goes beyond our control. And I know that was something that is continuing to be talked about, how interdisciplinary program and instruction can occur in a space like this, because the building can only do so much. It's just a vehicle for it, right? It can only do so much. And I think we've really covered all these. So the last one that we did is this building recently won the top design award in the state of Montana, and kind of just highly recognized by a national design jury for all aspects of it, but in particular the recognition of just how transparent the building is, both inside and out. That there's this ability to see everywhere. One of the jurors walked through the building at night and said, I fully understood what was happening in the entirety of the building by walking just through the open common spaces. What a cool message. Okay. Questions?